Gebuju Ininim. I want to share a little story I call Mewinzha. It means long ago. So long ago, this land around Hecla Island, including all islands and waters, was the domain of the island's band of Ojibways. It was the second largest band in Manitoba, and they had a capital. The capital was on Black Island. It was a center for teaching and practicing Médéwin. And because most traditional leaders were Médé, and these are people belonging to the Médéwin society, the government sought to destroy that society and to remove any opposition to their plans. One of the things to think about is that the white sand that is found at the southern tip of Black Island was considered sacred, and it's also considered to be the home of many spiritual beings. That white sand has an important place in Médéwin teachings and in ceremonies. However, all the different plants and trees and even fish have an important place in Médéwin ceremonies and teachings. And so it is important to show them the utmost respect and do that for all of them. However, continuing with my story, the federal government refused to recognize the request from the island band of Ojibways to have Black Island reserved for them. However, a small reserve was created at Loon Straits for some members of this band. At the same time, the federal government did reserve most of the land on the west side of Lake Winnipeg for refugees from Iceland. So these people then established the Republic of New Iceland, and it was centered on Gimli, Manitoba. What happened next is that a smallpox epidemic decimated the Republic of New Iceland. It also decimated the island's band of Ojibways. There were only 3 survivors left from the island's band, 3 people out of thousands of people. So what Indian Affairs did with these 3 survivors is that they placed one survivor with Winnipegao band, they placed one with Miskosipi band, and they placed one with Gananjioshtagon band. And then they dissolved the reserve at Loon Straits. And following that, the land was homesteaded by Métis people. And so you'll find some Métis families still living in that area. However, with the Ojibwe people removed from the islands of Lake Winnipeg, Hecla was settled by the remnants of the Icelanders. And they too created lives based on the natural abundance of fish, wildlife, and forests, and the waters in the area. In time, Manitoba would remove the descendants of those people to create a provincial park. So this tells a story about people and their lives and their connection to land, and also their removal from the land. One of the ways that I can connect on a personal level to the smallpox epidemic at that time is that one time long ago, I noticed many of the relatives of our family had blue eyes, and I asked my mom why. And she said that long ago there was a Thomas from the east side of Lake Winnipeg who was commercial fishing, and he continued to do that during the smallpox epidemic. But one day while he was lifting his nets, a thick fog rolled in, and when he was done, he didn't know which direction to drive his boat to go home. But he started out, and eventually he ended up on the west side of the lake. That was where he reached land. So he went from house to house, and it was said that inside each home he found the bodies of the people who had died in the smallpox epidemic. And then finally, at one home, he heard a baby crying, and this baby was a baby boy. And he took this boy home and he raised him as his son. And so all the descendants of this baby that was brought across the lake all have light colored eyes. So that's our story about the connection with that time. But for each one of you, I want to ask you to look around at the land that's there and answer these questions. What evidence is there of the past inhabitants of the area? What evidence is there of how they used the land and water? And would you be able to create a life here? And how would you sustain yourself and your family? And to me, even though the lands and the waters have been changed over the last 200 years or so, they can still sustain life and abundance if you work with that land and water in a good way to create a good life for yourself. Miigwech.